you're,
Oh, sorry.
and then the last thing is fun. And Doc
Definitely.
good at all those things, but and and no one can get it perfectly correct. But it's just like I remember when I would plan my lessons, or even when I would stop and reflect on my lessons and go, "This isn't working. What's not? Oh God, we haven't done anything fun. Or, oh God, they haven't. They've been following directions, and there's no autonomy here." And I found it a useful tool.
No, that's good.
Exactly.
That's excellent. What's the name of that book again?
Developmental designs.
Developmental Designs. Yep,
Developmental designs.
that's great. I'm going to check that out for sure. Yeah.
Probably updated it, but
One of the things that Jeanette said that I really liked is she's talked about a mantra.
yeah.
I don't use that terminology with my kids, but I'm all about mantra with them. Like I say literally the same things over and over again to them on purpose, because when they hear it like that over and over again, it becomes reality. So if you don't want him to roll his eyes and moan whenever something goes wrong or whatever, I have an expression that they can say instead, like you said, like you had a great one, and it was like, "Oh, I'm going to try again." That's a great expression. I mean, I try to think of ones that maybe in a classroom setting that they can all say together, or something that's kind of zippy that they can hold on to, and I always incorporate a movement with it too. And so that way, like they just really that kind of thing in a classroom setting, it brings about real change in their behavior. And I'll tell them, you don't have to like this class and you don't have to like music. That's fine. But while you're here, you just got to follow along with the stuff. And they do, they do. It's like, all right, it is kind of enjoyable. And the time goes really fast and they like to move around, and the activities I choose are ones that aren't terribly uncomfortable for them, and I get a pretty good engagement. I mean, near 100%. Every year I got maybe like 2 or 3 kids out of like the 600 that I teach that are like just kind of won't do anything. But for the most,
600. Ah.
yeah, yeah. Go ahead, Jeanette.
So recently I reread the book Teaching Music in the 20th Century, and it is the four um, authors, and one of for Dalcroze, that's Kodai of Dalcroze and something else. So
Uh-huh.
for
Is it?
Dalcroze was Abramson. So
Uh-huh.
yeah. So I don't know if you guys have all read that book.
I haven't read that one, but I should.
I haven't
Yeah.
read it cover to cover, but I've seen it.
Okay. So in one of the sentence that he wrote, he's such a good pedagogue actually, and he said he treats the Dalcroze teacher should treat the students as an artist participating in your class. Um, so it makes me think that, oh, I'm not giving them instructions and say follow me. We are cooperating together. And so they gives them room to participate and to be creative, and for them to know, oh, the teacher really appreciates what you do. And so the student will make a movement, and then I will maybe try to play the music of him, and that then he feels, wow, I am part of it. So
Hmm.
like um I wonder how many of us, even um Dalcroze teachers, like long-term experience teachers, that might, like when I'm a student in the class, I wonder if they ever thought of treating me as an artist in this group. I think some teachers they do, but some teachers is less maybe. But that reading that makes me think, okay, even though let's say little kids, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, do I treat them as a student following me, or as an person with artistic ideas? You know, maybe not so high level, but your ideas. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's one of the big advantages of the Dalcroze work over the other methods that I've used is the level at which there is a give and take with the teacher, and you get into a flow where the teacher is just participating in the class the same as they are, and it's much more, you know, they have much more autonomy. And so one of the things I do with the kids is we come up with our own sort of plastique, you know, as a class, and that is entirely choreographed by them, you know, I guess in sort of concert with each other, and that's just a great. And then we present them at the end of the year, and that's sort of our end of the year sort of program, and that you know, that's been, I think, a great opportunity for me to really put the onus on them. Now I prepare them for it all year, so that when we get to that point, and you say, hey, what do you think, kind of movement do you think we should do here? You know, they've got some basis of movement vocabulary from which to draw, which you have to build up. You can't just on day one, on a one-off class, say, how does that make you want to move? You're going to get wacky responses. They don't quite understand the nature of the Dalcroze movement. You know, I think that I say this sometimes, and Dalcroze people understand what I'm talking about. Some people don't, but a lot of the teaching I do with this grade level and other grade levels, I taught instrumental music when I first started in San Diego. I taught like, you know, middle school and elementary instrumental music, orchestra and band. And I found now that I've kind of come full circle and I'm teaching, you know, Dalcroze almost exclusively, that it's the same thing. I'm teaching the instrument of the body, and it's a lot of the same like kind of teaching that I was doing when I was teaching the saxophone. But instead of the saxophone, I'm teaching them, you know, the Dalcroze inspired movements that, you know, that we sort of know, and teaching them to improvise with those, and teaching them to create music with them. And to the same degree, you can have them have contributions as you would if they're in a band or an orchestra. Absolutely.
So because I don't have a lot of experience teaching that age in a group setting, so I'm curious, how do you guys induce or encourage or movement for that age group, like grade 6, 7, yeah, 6, 7, like for somebody, meaning that they didn't have a lot of experience, let's say limited. What are the interesting games that you have used?
Before we say anything, I'm interested in, Anthony, you telling me what the Dalcroze movements are.
Oh yeah, well, there's a style of movement, I think that
What is that?
you know,
I'm a dancer, remember.
right. Well, yeah, absolutely, and I'm not.
And
But
I studied Dalcroze with Lisa Parker and Hilda Schuster, believe it or not. So
sure.
that's why I'm wondering what you consider, and then I will then just say, I'll listen to you, but when I teach, I use just natural movements, bending the knees. And so it all is in that walking that we do. But I do developmental movements to get the nervous system organized. So I use Dalcroze all the time, but I'm doing certain movements. So that's why I'm sort of scrutinizing what you mean.
Sure. I'll give you an example. Okay, so so I do, especially with this age group, I'll do a lot of things with complementary rhythm.
That's great.
And complementary rhythm, and so stepping a rhythm and then clapping the complement at the same time, right? So this is like a thing I try to do, and this is a very Dalcroze sort of thing.
Excellent.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, but I'm picky about the technique of it, right? I want them to do it a certain way, and I'll just, if you don't mind, I'll just demonstrate kind of where I start with it. Is I have my shoes on, so it feels weird. But the first thing I'll have them do is just lean forward until they can't, right? So they're getting a sense of balance. I'll say, okay, lean, and then catch yourself. And do that a bunch of times. And then I'll do something I call the astronaut walk, which is where you walk each step until you are losing your balance, right? And you get this effect of walking, you can go backwards or whatever. You get this effect of walking, and I'll tell them, I want your chest to lead you. And so we're starting to get into a little technique of how to stretch out a walk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll say, now as you're going, 3 claps to the next one. And now we're getting half notes, right? At the 8th note complement. And I want it to look like that. And that's what I mean, I guess, by like that to me is like, so we're starting with just like a sensation of what it feels like to do that kind of stretched out step. And so, but I want it to look like that. I'm picky about that.
But it's also being expressed through the length of the notes.
Right, exactly.
So it is music through movement.
Yeah, so sometimes I'll start with the movement, like that activity. I'll start with the movement.
Yeah.
I want you to move like this, and then I'll play with it. And then then all of a sudden the light goes on. Oh, I see, I'm stretching out the note all the way. And I'm counting the little beats in between. And so they start with the movement and then they realize the music. And then I'll do it the other way, where I'll start with music and say, oh, let's just walk with this. What kind of walk works with this? And then I'll point out kids in the class and I'll say, hey, the way they're walking looks about right to me. Can we do that one? Let's do the Mindy walk. Everyone walk like Mindy. And everyone walk like, and then I say, now try something different with it. I'll change the way I play and you try something different. And, oh, this one's a little heavier. And I'm like, oh, Johnny's got the walk there. Can we do Johnny's walk? And I'm getting them to, I kind of of both minds. I like the idea of natural movement. Carnegie Mellon tends to be more about that natural movement. But I also dig actually Dalcroze, from what I've read of his writings, was much more prescriptive. Like the way he wanted people to move was very specific.
And I think that Dalcroze is busting out, even just in the last 5 years.
Yeah,
it's gotten more interested in dance.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah, and just movement in general. It's branching out, and so the teachers are young, and learning the technique, which is, I don't think anything's as good as Dalcroze. Teaching anything through Dalcroze is just amazing because it's expressive. And when we talk about what happens when the kids stop having music in school, and then we ask them suddenly to be expressive, and they don't have those tools through their movement and music anymore, their art, poof, it's sort of disconnected. So tricking them into realizing it's still in them.
Yeah, I think.
And feeling that success. I love that you do both attempts. It's great to start from the music and have them move. And then I'm going to do that.
Starting with movement is great. Starting with music is great. Starting, with a little hybrid of both is good. With the balloon games I do are the same thing. We'll take a balloon and we'll toss it, but I have a specific way. I want you to toss it, bend the knees, down and up, and then catch, right? So it's like, I'm pretty prescriptive about how I toss the balloon. With the younger kids especially, you don't just say, hey, toss the balloon. Bad idea, right? You got to give them some pretty strict parameters of how you want that balloon toss to go.
Well, that's your toy versus tool is awesome.
Exactly. Yes, this is a tool.
So good. So good.
There's a way you use a hammer so that it's safe and so that it actually works. You don't just play with the hammer.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the same thing. And some of these things look like toys, but they're actually tools, scarves. And I don't use a ton of manipulatives, but I do like balloons, scarves, and balls.
That's good.
Pretty well. Little drums too. I like little drums.
Yeah.
I think that would make a wonderful publication or article, Anthony.
I know. I'm working on it.
The balloon. Just the balloon, activities with balloons. I remember when I was working on a pain clinic, I used to use a balloon because I was working with adults doing dance movement therapy, and they were very restricted in their motions. So the balloon, and I, the lighter touch, it doesn't take a lot of energy, but then they would get outside their comfort zone. Sometimes they would get re-injured. You have to be careful about that. But I remember the psychiatrist walking in the room and going, "What the heck are you doing?" He didn't quite get it. But
yeah,
but that would make a nice little article, Anthony, or I don't know, pamphlet or booklet or something.
Well, I've got some ideas about all of this. We'll have to get into that at a later date. But about how to best. There's a lot of problems with Dalcroze publications in general, and I'm working on how do you disseminate this information in a way that is useful to maybe the uninitiated. And you know, it's difficult because we kind of are very insular, and what we do requires a little bit of like baseline knowledge that not everybody has. And so you know, it's like a different way to approach music. And I was lucky that my father, who's a music teacher but not a Dalcroze teacher, was hip enough when I was young to put me in Dalcroze classes when I was 5 or 6 years old. So I've always sort of, you know, approached music this way. So for me, everything makes total sense. But when I get like an undergrad music ed major in my room, sometimes they're looking at me like,
Oh, don't make me move.
yeah, like what?
Don't make me
They don't
move.
understand at all what I'm getting. It's like their approach to music is to me completely foreign, and mine is to them. And so I think this is a bit of a problem in the Dalcroze publication world. Is it's like you can make them, you can talk about it within the Dalcroze community pretty easily, but to try to get other people to understand it is like a huge challenge.
I'm curious, you talk about natural movement. So the balloon, playing with the balloon, is that natural movement? Is that a
Oh,
part of?
Can be
all right. So what are we comparing it to? Prescribed movement, right?
prescribed, maybe a choreographed or
So what do we do in a day? Anything we do in a day, we talk with our hands, we reach for things, we tie things, we bend our knees to get something, you know, all these things. So when I'm working with non-dancers and dancers, I have to find what's likely something they'll all want to explore. And so I go to throwing and jumping and any kind of tell a story. I have great little stories I tell or have them tell. Getting up this morning, turn it into a dance. Brushing our teeth. How could you dance while you brush your teeth? And you know, you could be at the piano playing that and telling the story. But you know, that's not something I do with little kids. That's what I do with my little kids. I don't know what I do with seventh graders, and mostly very poetic things or thoughtful phrases, or take the same line. I'm sure you've done this, Dawn, and pass it around. Like, no, I won't do that. You know, if we all pass that around, we all could do that in a different move, and we could set it into a measure. So finding, you know, setting up, you're saying we need to set up, so you set up your 4-4, and everybody has to, no, put a natural movement. I won't do that. You know, so it's an expressive movement. And then you can say, now travel across the floor saying that. So moving across the floor, going front and back. I mean, just working in these Zoom frames is so fascinating for dance, isn't it, Dawn?
Agree. I love it. It's on some level I love it, but I know the interaction with kids, which I haven't done a lot on Zoom, but anyway, is challenging. You know, the staying connected to the kids when they disappear for a second. You know that, you know. Anyway, but yeah, natural.
What is the difference between prescribed movement and natural movement? Like which playing with the balloon is a prescribed movement?
I would
Well,
say,
go ahead.
my understanding of it is this, and I might be wrong about this, but when I think about natural movement in eurythmics, I think about like Neely would say something like, let's walk, and I just want you to walk in the way you normally walk, and then I just want you to clap on the first beat. And he doesn't tell you how to do it. He just says, and clap on the first beat. And then I might want you to explore a little bit of the space. So clap someplace else as you clap. And like, you know, you just kind of do it your own way. And people just sort of do it however they feel. And some people might start to get silly with it and start clapping on their head or whatever, or maybe they don't, maybe they're just walking. But you're exploring your own sort of interpretation of the movement, right? Whereas when I do it sometimes, I'll actually break it down and I'll be like, this is how I want you to walk right now. Okay, I want you to use the, sometimes we walk heel to toe and sometimes we walk toe to heel. And for this walk, I want you to do a toe to heel walk. So I want you to step and point your toe. And then I also want you, when you clap, I want that clap to travel forward like you're sending the clap to somebody else. And each time we clap on beat one, I want you to send the clap to somebody else. And this is how I want you to clap. I'm being more prescriptive because I'm demanding a certain kind of walk and I'm demanding a certain kind of clap. And I'm not letting you just figure that out on your own. I'm really telling you, this is how I want you to do it this way. And then from there, I like to go, then from there, you can find all kinds of exploration from there. But I find with kids, if I start with like, just do it this way, fake it till you make it, I say, just do it my way. And then we'll find your way, like off of that. But I lean a little bit more. I think that both, they work hand in hand. Natural movement and prescription.
Don't you think that's Dalcroze planned it that way? In a way, that prescription, this is what you do, and now follow my music.
Right.
And at that point, I can't imagine everybody rigidly. I mean, I've been in some very prescriptive Dalcroze classes that it was very hard for me not to dance in, because I love, especially when you're with a group of people. But then that sense of freedom that comes, I think, is what Dalcroze wanted in order for us to feel what the music is, what the music's doing. So you need to know how to do it. You need to play the beat. You need to walk with the beat, which a lot of kids can't do at the first thing. Their energy is so low. So there's a good reason for that. We want that to get into their bodies. It's a very innate thing. Dalcroze knows the beat. It's amazing that way. So they find that beat in themselves and they're like, oh, it's like jump starting a person. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good place to start is with a little bit of prescription. I mean, I find to be, and the more I read Dalcroze's writings, the more like that's kind of validated for me because and there's a lot of different schools of thought. I mean, I think there's a continuum of like the ultimate prescription being like ballet and like the ultimate like freedom being like, contact improv or whatever. Like Dalcroze is like somewhere like wherever you put that is sort of like, we're probably only in this much of a continuum between like, me being a little bit more towards the choreography and like
it's the same thing.
Somebody being over here. It's like not that big a difference, but
no.
So I remember reading Abramson in his book, the book that I was telling you, that he mentioned another point that triggered me thinking is he said a lot of times we move subconsciously, like we bend down to tie our shoes, laces, we fetch a cup or whatever. And in our Dalcroze work, we are trying to highlight or make conscious our movement instead of subconscious. They become conscious. So I thought it's so when you're saying the continuum, the ballet show and the free movement, so it's we're trying to make from the unconscious to conscious.
And that's how you learn.
Go back and forth.
That's how we learn. Dawn?
Because I think all of it is conscious. I think ultimately it's all very conscious. When you're doing contact improvisation, you're paying attention.
You have
ultimately,
to, or you fall off.
I really like the continuum idea of prescriptive movement, and I think Jeanette's question was a great question, and I think Anthony's answer, along with Jill's answer, were both really fabulous about what that is, because it is a continuum. Ballet is at one extreme of it, but I don't think it's conscious to unconscious, although the Dalcroze work builds consciousness, absolutely, but I think it's across the board consciousness on.
Maybe the other end isn't contact improv. Maybe the other end is just like walking in the park. And like
when kids do this,
playing on the playground or whatever. Like that's like where you're not even in your body. You're just like,
But natural movement is conscious too, right? I mean,
well, not all the time.
Yeah, we're not always conscious all the time.
No, because it gets anchored in there. The learning.
When we're those class, we're working on all those levels. We're expanding our consciousness in our somatic awareness, in our art,
Exactly. Right.
in our, all of it's going on like kind of at the same time.
Well, I think are we supposed to go back to the main meeting?
I don't know, probably at some point. What time is it?
Jeanette,
Almost
I
2:30.
just I just want to say that it brings you to yourself. Instead of just, think about when you're moving around your kitchen, whoops, crash. I wasn't thinking. But if I'm really, oh, I want that cup, and I'm really, it brings you to yourself. And I think, again, that's what Dalcroze was doing, bringing us to ourselves.
Right. I think the Dalcroze teacher's job is to make us conscious of our unconscious body movement.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do.
That's a very good summation.
I don't think it's the ultimate thing. I think it's one of the things. But we could talk about this for a long time. I mean,
Yeah, I think we've got a little bit off the topic. I mean, this is we get I don't know necessarily. I mean, that informs all of my teaching, no matter what the age group is. This idea that the movements exist and that we're just making them conscious. I do think about that a lot. Like I always say to people, like, I find it that it's inside out, right? It's not like there's these musical ideas and I'm trying to put them in your head. It's that the music's already here and we're just bringing it out and making it conscious. You already know how to do a whole note. You already know. Your body knows how to do it. We just have to make it conscious.
we should
All
probably
right.
go.
I dig that. So in the chat box, I put a link to go back to the main meeting, although it looks like that might be wrapping up, but maybe we should at least make an appearance there.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.
Little kids, we'd have to build up for it to not be too insane.